Well, I've got it. Should I push it?
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome to the Leaders in Housing Counseling call. Normally we give people a few minutes to settle, to get in, but we've already got 150 people on the line and climbing, and so let's dive right in. And we usually have a regular agenda with multiple topics. We're going to toss that out the window and really have our conversation focus with Sarah Jarik, who we'll introduce in a moment, but hopefully all of you know her well. And part of the plan for today is to talk about some of the plans that the Office of Housing Counseling has been working on. We'll spend a fair amount of time on HAWC, and then there'll be some open question and answer room. But you please feel free to use the chat box or question box, whatever it's called, on the right-hand side of your screen, and we'll pull those out as we go through the call today. And also we have Go US MNT. Matthew, what is this?
The U.S. men's national team is playing Germany right now, trying to advance to the knockout round of the World Cup.
There you go. Our advocacy knows no end. All right. So let's dive in. So we have Sarah Jarik, who's joining us. She's the HUD Deputy Assistant Secretary for Housing Counseling and also the head of the new Office of Housing Counseling, and as we all know, a real champion of housing counseling and our work. We all appreciate greatly what she's doing. So Sarah, welcome, and we'd love to hear from you about, I know you've just coming out of a management meeting in Atlanta. Have we got Sarah? We had her a moment ago.
I have no idea.
So give us, hello?
Is that better?
Much better.
Okay. Let me start by saying go U.S. national team, and I'm really impressed if any of you are joining me rather than playing hooky from work and watching the game. I do want to thank Bruce and Matthew and the National Housing Resource Center for having me here today. The partnership we have is really invaluable, and as one example, the letter that I received a couple weeks ago from NHRC on issues and suggestions for HUD oversight of housing counseling agencies was really great, and that kind of feedback is really going to improve our work and yours. Obviously, we're not going to agree 100% on everything, but I can't tell you how helpful it is to get the reactions from you in the field to our work. It's very easy to be disconnected in the federal government, and these connections are fantastic. So I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say to me today, and I'll share a little of the work we're doing in a very summary fashion, I hope. I won't go through with you what a wonderful job you all do, only because I know I can't say that enough, but once I get started, I have a hard time stopping. I'm also very proud of our achievements with the housing counseling program, and we can discuss more about things we've done in the past if you have questions about that. I do want to focus on our partnership with housing counselors, though, and the way we communicate. One of our goals was to make sure that we communicate our work more broadly to housing counselors, and we use our listserv and the Bridge, our newsletter, a lot. In October of 2012, so 2 fiscal years ago for us, we had about 2,000 people on our listserv, and we didn't have a newsletter. And right now we have over 11,000. And so we hope we're reaching you. And if we're not, we do have an email box where you can ask to subscribe or just ask a question. It's housing.counseling@hud.gov. And it's very important to us that we're able to communicate, and we urge you to use those vehicles. I wanted to share with you first some priorities we have at the Office of Housing Counseling going forward so you can be aware of what's on the horizon for us. And we did get together as a group in Atlanta last week to discuss these. My staff, as you may know, we have 67 authorized staff in the Office of Housing Counseling. They're located in 30 different places around the country, and so we don't get together very often, but we did recently. And one of the things we realized and sharpened was some of our key priorities. So I'm going to share those with you now, again, very briefly, but please ask questions if you have them. The first one I want to talk about is a number of changes to aspects of our program, and I'm going to put those together, and then maybe I'll take questions on those, and then we'll talk specifically about the HAWK initiative, the Homeowners Armed with Knowledge. But let me talk first about the program changes with the Office of Housing Counseling. I want to start first with grants. As you know, I hope we awarded more than $40 million in grants last month to hundreds of national, regional, and local HUD-approved housing counseling agencies. We're very proud that our funding continues to be flexible and be useful to you to provide core operating support and allow you to respond to unique needs of your markets that aren't funded in other ways. The note for this year was designed to allow us to use the same grant applications for fiscal 15 funding once it's appropriated by Congress, and we hope by doing that it'll lighten the workload for both the agencies and for HUD. Well, so what about, well, in 2014, I hope you all who expect to receive grants have received your grant contracts. We are committed to processing them as quickly as possible and making the funding available to you rapidly. The 2015 funding we're keeping an eye on as well. The President proposed $60 million for housing counseling in his 2015 budget, which is a 33% increase from the 2014 enacted level. The House approved appropriations for the program at $45 million, flat level from this year, and the Senate approved appropriations at $49 million. The House and Senate have not scheduled time to reach agreement on a final budget yet. We're waiting to see what level ultimately passes. And I again want to thank you for your efforts in educating Congress about how the funding is used.
So actually the House ended up at $47 million.
I'm sorry. You know, I had that going back and forth, and somebody corrected it wrong.
Right.
Thank you.
Which was a lot of work that we did. Yeah.
Yes, yes, and there were changes between at various points in time. So thank you for that correction. In terms of moving on to housing counselor certification, I do hope everyone on the call is aware that housing counselors will need to get an individual certification from HUD once we publish a final rule. We're still in the process of evaluating comments, and as I think you know, I'm limited in what I can discuss while we're in the deliberation phase. I will say that I know that it's important that you know when the certification process will begin, that you have time to prepare for it, and we're committed to getting materials and information out as early as possible, and we're still working through the legal limitations of that while we're doing the deliberation. Once the final rule is published, there will be a period of time when counselors have to come into compliance with that rule, meaning get certified, and the exact details of that will be the subject of the final rule. On another topic, we are changing our reporting requirements, and beginning in October of 2014, the HUD 9902 will be simplified to make it easier to report key results of housing counseling. We removed outcomes that counselors may not know, like whether a family remains in their home, And instead, we're going to be asking for outcomes that are clearly related to housing counseling. For example, we're going to report on the number of clients who received assistance with budgeting as a result of housing counseling. That's an activity that's incredibly valuable to families, and we currently don't measure it as an outcome of housing counseling. But the new reporting is going to allow us to share meaningful outcomes with partners in Congress. We'd like to work with other housing counseling funders to see if the new reporting format can become a standard so we can start to reduce the multiple reporting that occurs. Another area we're working on is our oversight process, what used to be called the biennial performance reviews, and we're now just calling performance reviews. HUD does these reviews of agencies that are in the HUD program on a regular basis, and there are two objectives. One is to ensure quality counseling, and the other is to make sure if the agency is a grantee that they are a good steward of federal funds. We do realize in the past that reviews were done differently around the country, and we have the opportunity to streamline some aspects of the review process. This is an area that the National Housing Resource Center highlighted as one that could use some improvement, I'll say, and we agree. I'm proud to say that our all-employee staff meeting both reviewed the letter and also trained our own staff about a pilot process for performance reviews that we're going to roll out slowly, I shouldn't say slowly, but we're going to roll it out over the next few weeks, and we will be conducting a training for housing counseling agencies on it. Our new performance review guide is about a quarter of the size of the old one. We really tried to streamline the checklist, and we want to include a new self-certification component to make the agency, to really reduce what the agency has to produce for us and instead certify the documentation themselves. It's going to cut down on the time it takes for the review for both entities tremendously, we hope. We're going to look forward to your feedback on the new process, and we will make adjustments as we roll it out and get some experience with it. Another area that we're looking at is the Housing Counseling Federal Advisory Committee. In the Dodd-Frank Act, we are required to set up a federal advisory committee, which is no small task. And we recently filed our intent with the Library of Congress as well as Congress itself. Who knew the Library of Congress needed to see this? The advisory committee is not going to replace other means that we have today of getting input and advice from our stakeholders, but we hope it's a group that can add valuable new insights to what we do. In the upcoming months, we'll be soliciting membership through public notices, and we will place those pretty prominently on our listservs and on other networks. The statute has different categories of folks in the advisory committee, and so all of that will be spelled out. I want to turn to the area of research briefly. The academic research on housing counseling, I think, has been incredibly valuable to making counseling accepted by lenders, members of Congress, and the real estate industry and other government partners. As you know, many major studies over the last few years have shown a consistent and significant correlation between housing counseling and reduction in mortgage defaults, both from pre-purchase housing counseling and from foreclosure prevention counseling. Hot off the press, the Philadelphia Fed has published yesterday the results of their long-term study on pre-purchase housing counseling, which showed significant impacts of housing counseling on things like credit scoring and the level of debt a family has. HUD has begun a multi-million-dollar study of housing counseling using a randomized experimental design to look at the impact of housing counseling on long-term outcomes of first-time home buyers. the HUD study is going to add to the growing body of evidence about housing counseling, and it'll be used to inform our program results. I want to thank those of you on the call who are participating in the study. It's a really big deal, and we think it's going to be very, very important to our work. Let me stop with those highlights of things that we have looking ahead and to see if there are any questions or comments that you all have on anything I've mentioned so far, and then we'll turn to Hawk.
And I'll
So
just
real
start
quickly,
by...
let me ask one quick question, which is on the performance reviews, the former BPRs, you've changed the protocol in terms of how often people get them or agencies get them. Could you just explain that a little bit?
What we've done in transition is we've definitely changed the frequency in a number of ways, and I would say this was not all planned in a strategic way, but more of necessity. We had, in our transition, we had to prioritize getting our office in order, and so delayed or deferred a number of reviews during, frankly, the last year and a half or so. So there's an aspect of just catching up that has to take place. The priorities that different offices had for the frequency of reviews were not always tied like clockwork to a 2-year authorization. And so from our point of view, there was never set consistency. There were some triggers or indicators that we looked at to see whether an agency needed to be reviewed as a priority. And some of those, for example, might be if there was a significant change in the leadership or staffing of the organization, if we had received a number of complaints from consumers about an organization, and whether there were programmatic issues or questions that we thought would best be served by a review. We will set out more standard expectations on the review timing, but right now we are continuing to do reviews, I will say, with significant judgment from the point of contact and the supervisors here. There should not be a situation where people are getting reviewed very frequently unless the reasons for that are clear to the parties involved. And very frequently, I mean annually. That once a year review is not the norm for an individual agency. Does that help?
Yeah.
All right, we have some questions. I'm just going to mention before we get into the questions that we didn't have a list of topics that Sarah wanted to cover, so the slide you're seeing is one of only a few slides that we're going to have, so slides are not supposed to be moving. So here's some questions from Amy Enderly. She asked whether Dodd-Frank required all staff to be certified or only counselors, and maybe I could expand on that and ask if you could also cover what's in the proposal, HUD's proposal.
Oh, I'm not going to be able to just go through the whole proposal right now. I'm sorry.
Oh, I mean just in terms of whether all staff or just counselors will need to be certified.
Yeah, I
Okay.
would have to go back and refer you to the language of the proposal. And we have an FAQ, a whole page on housing counselor certification on our website. So if you go to, and I can send the link for Matthew to distribute, but it's HUD.gov/housing counseling, all one word. And when you're there, there's a page for housing counseling professionals, and we have an entire page on the certification, including frequently asked questions. The short answer to the question is that counselors who are involved in the HUD counseling program are required to be certified. Dodd-Frank does not require all staff of an agency to be certified.
All right, and I will circulate that link after the call. Someone just asked, let's see, Ethan Pope asked for more information on how to join the Housing Counseling Federal Advisory Committee that you mentioned.
Right now, there isn't a way to do that. We have to publish a notice that we're accepting applications. And so at the time of that publication, and I think we're still a few months away from that, we will send notice very widespread that we're accepting applications for the Federal Advisory Committee.
Great. And Afreen Alam, who I'll also shout out, is the chair of the HUD task force that had put together the letter that Sarah mentioned a few times. She asked for more information on how agencies can participate in the long-term study of counseling that HUD is doing.
The agencies that are participating in the research are not, it wasn't by volunteering. The researchers made selections based on the criteria that they were using around the location, the type of clients, the type of counseling offered. So they have selected agencies in a number of metropolitan areas that are the focus of the research study, and that's the decision of the research group. I don't believe they have a need for additional agencies at this point in time. But I also wouldn't be surprised if that changes over time, since this is a study that's going to take place for 3 or 4 years.
Okay. Sandra Quinones asked if there's an estimated deadline for when you'll publish the final certification rule.
The $64,000 question. I wish I knew. And if I knew, I couldn't tell you. They would have to kill me.
All right.
We're going to try and give you as much heads-up notice as we can, but they're very fussy that everybody hear this news at the same time, so we are not allowed to speculate on that.
All right. A question about performance reviews from Janelle Green. She asked if you can specify whether LHCAs should expect desk reviews as an additional option from the in-person performance reviews.
Oh, great question, Janelle. We are using desk audits as well as in person. Again, we're leaving discretion up to the point of contact for the time being, and we'll probably, want to talk to you all and others about your suggestions for the pluses and minuses of those. But we are, because we're behind in our reviews, we expect to do more desk reviews in the near term.
Great.
And just to highlight that, really means that we don't go on site. We will ask for files and information through a secure conduit, and still have pretty extensive, phone discussions about the agency and the work.
Great. I think one more, and then we have some hot questions that I'll put off for now. But from Lynn McConnell, will HUD be offering training on the new 9902 before it is implemented? Will HUD be offering more training on the 9902 before it's implemented?
We did a training with the CMS providers recently, and we do have, we can and will do additional training for staff. The main training is going to take place, I think, with the CMS providers in what the fields are and how you'll access them with the particular, the system that you use. But we will schedule training for counselors as well, and I know that counselors may need to change some of their data, the information they collect in order to submit under the new 9902. There was a training for counselors in January, and that is archived on our training, the training part of our website. And I'll try to get the link to that to Matthew as well.
Great. And we actually had another training question come in. It's whether HUD is still accepting NeighborWorks trainings and if they're still valid and being accepted by HUD, and other types of trainings. That's from Diana Bella.
Let me try to clarify that, and Diana, if I'm misunderstanding your question, please send a follow-up. HUD does not, HUD reviews individual training at the time of the review of the agency. to ensure that the agency staff is being trained regularly in HUD standards and in counseling topics. HUD accepts a lot of training for that purpose. So you may get training from a GSE or from a local trade, a local network, or NeighborWorks training, or La Raza or NCRC training, many others. So that's done in the course of our performance review. We do not require training apart from that right now. In other words, we have a general requirement that counselors be trained to maintain their training. National industry standards have separate training requirements, and we support them. Those are on their website, and the providers and the requirements are listed there, and I'm not confident enough of knowing them to go through them directly. A third place that requires training is within the National Foreclosure Mitigation Counseling Program, where I think they align with the national industry standards. When we go to counselor certification, which isn't required yet, there is not a training requirement with that in the way that we've proposed it so far. Training will be available in order to help with the test, but there won't be a separate training requirement as it was put out in the draft notice. I hope I answered the question and didn't confuse things there.
I think so, and yeah, please send a follow-up if there is any more on that. We'll try to get to it later. There is at least one more, and I'll just tell Bruce if he wants to, and then move on to Hawk just to jump in. But what will be, this is from Kelly Gill Gordon, what will be the process for compliance reviews at the intermediary or SHFA level? Should we expect a review from Meyer Hoffman McCann for FY15?
Yeah, that was another topic of the letter that came to us, and we do want to work with all of the intermediaries and state HFAs so that we're all aligned around what the reviews will be and when they will occur. We are looking at creating a more on point, I guess I'll say, review system. Meyer Hoffman McCann will continue to do a review of the financial requirements of the HUD program for intermediaries and state HFAs, and those reviews and this schedule will be out, I hope, earlier than what you've received in the past. But in addition, and complementary to that, HUD will do reviews of intermediary programs. We've been testing a review protocol for intermediaries that, in fact, I tested, I think, the first one a few months ago, and we're still working on that with to make sure that we're adding value to the intermediary work and being clear about the expectations. We have a lot of work to do to align, to train intermediaries on our oversight expectations, to pull from intermediaries what's reasonable and what are the best practices in oversight and quality counseling. And so I think that's going to continue to be a work in progress for the next few months, but we're investing quite a bit in program design around intermediary reviews right now. And we welcome what we got from an HRC, and we welcome additional dialogue.
Excellent. Well, let's dive into Hawk then. Actually, do you want to open it up with some? Maybe I should open it up with just the comment that Hawk has generated a tremendous amount of enthusiasm in our circles about creating a product that would incentivize people going to housing counseling, and obviously there's been a lot of thought gone into what the structure is and what the counseling points are. So people are very excited about it really creates an opportunity for our industry and hopefully a model that can grow to other branches of the mortgage industry. But with that, would you like to open up?
Sure, I'll say a few words and then answer questions. And partly I just very briefly put Hawk in context and say a little about the program so we're all on the same wavelength. Hawk is part of administrative policies called the Blueprint for Access to expand access to credit. And HAWK fits in because one of the ways to expand access to credit, in our view, is to make housing counseling a more routine part of the mortgage transaction so that consumers can improve their credit profile and prepare for the responsibilities of homeownership. I'll say again, HAWK stands for Homeowners Armed with Knowledge, and the phrase covers several policies that link housing counseling and FHA mortgage insurance. HAWK for New Home Buyers is the one that links housing counseling to reductions in the FHA mortgage insurance premiums, but there are a couple others as well, and I'd just like to touch on them. So the goals are both to expand access to credit and also remain a responsible steward of FHA mortgage insurance program, and as you know, that's faced some financial pressures over the last few years. In last August, though, FHA launched the first time it had linked counseling and FHA origination recently in the Back to Work program. Back to Work allows borrowers affected by foreclosures, short sales, or other events related to recession to obtain an FHA-insured mortgage in 12 months rather than 36 months. That is more common and was the previous FHA requirement. Borrowers have to meet stringent requirements to document financial recovery from a loss of income relating to the recession and obtain specialized pre-purchase housing counseling. And a number of you have been involved in doing Back to Work housing counseling. We're very grateful for that. We've started to see a number of loans come in. The volume is not high, but and we look forward to getting feedback on that program. We're going to be announcing additional HAWK initiatives, and the most recent one announced was HAWK for New Home Buyers, which is a pilot that was published in the Federal Register at regulations.gov. And let me just stop for a minute and say, please, please, please comment on the pilot program at regulations.gov. It's a really simple process. You basically submit an email, and the comments are going to be incredibly helpful to us to finalize the program. The comment period ends on July 15th, and that's a 60-day comment period total. And when the comment period ends, we will be publishing a final notice to officially launch the pilot. The goals of the pilot, and I do have some limitations in what I can discuss while we're in the comment phase, but I'll answer your questions as best I can. The goals of the pilot are threefold. One goal is to increase access to sustainable mortgages for first-time home buyers who are underserved. A second is to expand the number of families who improve their budgeting skills and housing decisions by giving them access to housing counseling, whether or not they decide to buy a home. And the third goal is to improve loan performance of all participants and reduce claims paid by the FHA Mutual Mortgage Insurance Fund. So under HAWK, very briefly, for new home buyers, first-time home buyers who qualify for an FHA-insured mortgage and who complete a course of housing counseling and education can qualify for tangible savings on their FHA-insured loans. The participation in housing counseling and in the program is voluntary, but we hope that our proposed incentives will motivate a significant number of first-time home buyers coming into the FHA portfolio to participate in housing counseling. Our intent is that the counseling and education are provided to the potential borrower at the times that it's most helpful to the consumer in the home buying and home ownership process. And we identify 3 different points in time: before the home purchase contract is signed, before the loan closes, and during the first year of home ownership. In the pilot notice, HUD prescribes the timing and content associated with the housing counseling and education, which is aligned with existing HUD standards and national industry standards. First-time home buyers who complete the pre-contract and pre-closing counseling will receive a reduction in the FHA upfront mortgage insurance premium, and we propose of 50 basis points, and a permanent reduction of 10 basis points in the annual MIP at closing. First-time homebuyers who then complete post-closing housing counseling, as evidenced by a housing counseling certificate, and who have made regular payments of their mortgage, will receive a further reduction in the MIP of 15 basis points beginning after the second year of homeownership. These MIP incentives for an average borrower, a borrower of an average size mortgage, could be worth about $9,800 in our calculation. Obviously, the exact amount is going to vary a lot depending on interest rates at the time and the borrower profile. HUD recognizes that resources to pay for counseling are limited, and we've designed the pilot to accommodate multiple sources of revenue. Payment for counseling is expected from parties that will benefit from the implementation of this pilot, including housing counseling clients that will become borrowers, FHA-approved lenders, servicers, and other government and private entities. To be specific, we, in the notice, require lenders to pay for housing counseling at the time of closing a total of $350. We also recommend that housing counseling clients pay at the pre-contract phase for all or a portion of their education costs. We are working on additional sources of funding from private and public entities. So, as I said earlier, HAWK for new home buyers would be available through a pilot program to first-time home buyers, and the terms have been published in the Federal Register. We expect the pilot to have an additional startup period that we call Phase 1 to test operational capacity, methods of attracting home buyer participation, and loan performance results. The first phase, we hope, will start sometime in October of 2014. And we don't expect Phase 1 to last very long. We would like to just test operations and then go to a very broad rollout of this so that it's accessible to all first-time home buyers. I do want to mention some of the other HAWK initiatives we have besides the HAWK for New Home Buyers pilot briefly, and then we'll open it up for questions. The HAWK Modification Success Program is another initiative we're working on. It's in the design phase now. It'll include housing counseling before a loan is modified as part of the FHA loss mitigation process. We are modeling this program on a similar effort by Treasury, and will provide details of this program in the upcoming weeks. In addition to the Modification Success Program, HUD's also working to create a release at the time of loan closing that would permit a servicer, investor, or insurer to share borrower contact information with a housing counseling agency in the event of default. And finally, HUD's working under the HAWK umbrella to make other notices regarding housing counseling more consumer-friendly, so they're easier to understand, especially for consumers that have no idea what housing counseling is. The new notices will explain the purpose of the referral and the type of assistance that borrowers can expect to receive from HUD-approved housing counseling agencies. So all of our HAWK initiatives are really geared to ensure broad access to housing counseling services as a way to gain access to the economic recovery overall. We expect HAWK to build a better foundation for middle-class home ownership, and we believe that these initiatives will indeed help families decide if home ownership is right for them. So that's a lot on our plate overall, and some very brief descriptions of the HAWK program. Let me turn it back to Bruce and Matthew to see what they want to highlight and open it up for your questions and comments.
So I know we have a lot of questions in the queue. Matthew, do you want to start with those?
Sure. Yeah, we do have a bunch of questions that have come in. So there have been actually a lot of questions about the Phase 1 and the kind of selection process. There's some more specific questions that I can get to, but could you maybe just give an overview of the Phase 1?
Yeah, in the notice, we mentioned that we want to do this Phase 1 to test the operation of the program for a limited period of time with a small group of lenders and servicers and counseling agencies. And we provide for, we note that a separate process to select participants for phase 1 will be published. We are required to go through Paperwork Reduction Act process before we can actually put any real applications out there. So the application process for phase 1 will not begin until we've published the application, and that is scheduled for sometime in August or September. The design of phase 1 we are still working on also, and that's going to inform what our selection criteria, the exact selection criteria will be. So we don't have more information than what's published right now.
All right. I'm going to stick with this for a minute, and we'll see if you can answer any of these. So Rebecca Sen said she noticed the HAWK program specifies only HCAs, and I think this is for phase 1. Is there a way for intermediaries to take part in the pilot, or is it HCAs only?
First of all, I would recommend that this be a comment in the, and I'm going to say this an umbrella way, everything should be a comment, and this is a good example of what should be a comment on regulations.gov, even a little email just to this question. Our intent was to not limit phase 1 to local housing counseling agencies or to use the term housing counseling agencies to exclude intermediaries. Intermediaries and state housing finance agencies, as our intent in writing the draft notice, would be considered in phase 1. But if we aren't clear on that, then that would make a good comment.
Great. A bunch of pretty specific questions that I think will be helpful for a lot of people. Can you explain the registration process with FHAC? This is from Ellie Pepper. She says, right now there's only an option for agencies that are providing HECM counseling.
Yeah. So the way that the HAWK counseling certification process is going to be designed to work as we've put out in the pilot notice. The certification that we use in FHA Connect, FHAC, for reverse mortgage counselors, they actually go into the federal system and issue a certificate that can subsequently be linked to a mortgage or the insurance file for a mortgage. And we want to expand that system dramatically so that housing counselors, not just reverse mortgage counselors, can issue certificates that are recorded and maintained in the FHA Connect system. In order to do that, housing counselors, at least their agencies, will have to have a representative who's authorized to work with the FHA Connect system, and they will be able to issue a certificate to document that the pre-purchase, pre-closing, and post-closing counseling requirements have been met by an individual consumer. Those will live in our system, and if the consumer decides on an FHA-insured loan, and they don't have to, right? But if they decide on that, then our certificates can be linked to that loan for underwriting purposes. The certificates can also be printed and be freestanding for other mortgage entities that might have counseling requirements or incentives down the road. But ultimately, part of rolling out HAWK will include ensuring that each agency participating in the program will be able to issue certificates in FHA Connect.
Great. I'm going to stick with Ellie Pepper and phase 1 questions. What constitutes a previous agreement with an FHA lender? Does it mean, could it be funds provided for homebuyer education, or is some sort of formal memorandum of understanding required to prove a previous relationship?
So Ellie's referencing a part of the published draft notice that mentions for phase 1, we're looking for counseling agencies that have worked with lenders and servicers in the past and have an agreement with them. We don't specify more detail on the nature of that agreement. Again, this is a good area for comment. Keep in mind that the purpose of phase 1 is really to test operation systems, and so knowing that the consumer, the counseling agency, and the lender need to find each other and work with each other for the program to work, having a track record or agreement of doing so will help us select folks for phase 1 testing.
All right. I'm going to go to some broader questions. So this is from
I'm sorry,
Mohan.
can I make one comment on phase 1? We've gotten comments already from both lenders and housing counseling agencies of tremendous interest in participating in phase 1. And I'll just lift up a concern that we're not looking for phase 1 to give a competitive advantage to any entity. The purpose of phase 1 is really to test the systems and make sure that we don't open this up and then find out that something is broken down and we're not able to issue a certificate or provide the insurance. So part of our phase 1 structuring is really to make sure that everyone's expectations are aligned around that. We're very heartened by the interest. I'm glad that so many entities believe in the program and believe it's worth participating early, but I just want to make that clear.
All righty. This question is from Mohan Lalwani. Under the proposal, would a FHA loan be able to be refinanced under HAWK guidelines to obtain the reduction in the mortgage insurance?
What a great question. The HAWK for new home buyers is limited to first-time home buyers that are defined by HUD existing FHA rules, and that generally means that the first-time home buyer cannot have owned a home previous for the past 3 years. So the short answer is no. Consumer cannot refinance into this program. However, FHA has a streamlined refinance program, and I would encourage housing counselors who aren't familiar with that program to go to the FHA websites and get information about it. It's a streamlined refinance, and there are, I think I last heard, upwards of 1 million FHA borrowers who would significantly benefit financially from going through the streamlined refinance by some of our estimates.
Great. This is a question that I'm glad someone asked because I think there's some confusion on it. This is from Brenda Lopez, but I've heard it from other folks, that the deadline to apply for phase 1 was yesterday. When I looked at the notice, that was not what I understood, but since a few people have thought that, could you just clarify if there was a deadline yesterday?
No, there was no deadline yesterday. In fact, applications are not being accepted for phase 1. We are not legally permitted to accept applications for phase 1 until we complete the Paperwork Reduction Act process and issue an official application. What we did ask for is if there's any intent or interest, folks can send an email to me or indicate that in the comments section of regulations.gov. We wanted to have a sense of whether lenders and counseling agencies would be interested in being part of phase 1, and essentially to know whether we would have a problem or not with recruiting testers. It appears that we have extensive interest, but there was not only has the deadline not passed, but it hasn't even started yet.
Great. More of a big picture question, I think, from Ethan Pope. He asked, will this HAWK mean potentially more utilization of non-traditional credit by lenders for consideration and or assistance for non-traditional borrowers?
That's a great question. I think, and this goes to a big question that Bruce always raises whenever I am in the room with him, of whether this will have an impact on credit overlays by lenders. The HAWK itself does not change rules regarding FHA underwriting. Back to Work didn't either. And lenders can and do put on overlays or pricing adjustments of different types in the non-FHA world for all different reasons. FHA is advocating and forceful in seeking to reduce those overlays that are unnecessary or have unnecessary impact, or where we see patterns of unnecessary denials, et cetera, et cetera. We believe that this will help those with non-traditional credit in a few ways. Housing counselors know how to bring somebody who may have non-traditional credit and banking into the traditional banking, and so a certain portion of the clientele may become traditional just by working with a housing counselor. We also hope that non-traditional lenders will be easier to find because of HAWK, and we're looking for ways to make sure that housing counselors and lenders find each other so that consumers can really do great shopping and lenders who are willing to offer these products are more accessible. But whether this by itself will have an impact of reducing overlays and opening up credit doors, underwriting doors, I think time will tell. I'd like to think that both the research and the experience of working with housing counselors will increase confidence in borrowers who are going to perform well but may not be the typical profile that lenders have been looking for lately.
All right. Okay. Bruce, sorry, Bruce lost his signal, so he was just letting me know.
What?
Bruce lost the connection for some reason, but he's going to jump back in just a second. I'm actually going to use my moderator's discretion and ask a question that hasn't been asked, but I thought was a little hard to. I was a little unclear on the proposal. Could you just talk about the what the proposal says in terms of the suggestions for how it should be paid for? I know that there's, agencies can do it any number of ways, but it kind of suggests a certain model. Could you just kind of talk about what's in the proposal about that?
I won't say so far as a model yet. We're aware that different counseling agencies have very different revenue streams and models, and we didn't want HAWK to upset the ones that worked. So that was one goal, is if counseling agencies have a way or ways to pay for this that work for them, we want to permit that and that are within our rules. But we also know that there's a lot of need for additional revenues, and we suggested several. And again, this is a good area for comment if there are things that we should do to make these alternatives easier to implement or communicate them differently. We would welcome comment on that. One area is the issue of the consumer paying for counseling, and we know this is controversial. There are some agencies who believe it's not permitted. We want to make it clear it is permitted under HUD rules, and the notice actually specifies the HUD rules around consumer paying for counseling, just as a reminder to those of you that might be interested in exploring this. The suggestion we make is that consumers pay for the earliest phases of counseling, because those are the paying for education, for example, before the contract of sale is something that the lenders are actually not permitted to pay for as part of the loan process. Since there's no loan, it becomes a fee that would trigger RESPA if they were to be involved then. Also, it's a stage where the consumer presumably hasn't made the commitment to home ownership yet or isn't fully informed about it and may choose not to, and they benefit the most at that stage. They benefit all through, but that's a very clear place. And many agencies have been charging consumers for a portion of the education or early counseling costs. The lender pay, we specify in the notice that we are proposing a requirement that the lender pay at closing, and we specify a model for doing that one piece of it. We don't believe that that will cover all of the costs of the counseling. It would be a portion. And we are working between a number of regulations, including the CFPB rules around fees at closing and FHA's own rules about fees that can be paid as part of the mortgage. As those rules change and we get clarity, one of our task items is to create some model agreements or models of payment that would help counseling agencies so you don't have to invent the wheel. And actually, we'll seek, if you want to share your models and are comfortable, we would distribute them. That is a work in progress that's not published in the notice and is not complete yet, but we would like to have as part of the program. We expect there may be other sources of funding as well. So, for example, we sought legislative authority to permit HUD to receive funding from servicers, investors, or foundations that we could distribute to housing counseling agencies as they were pooled, and maybe settlement funds. Unfortunately, that legislation did not move forward in appropriations bill yet, so it wasn't part of the appropriations packages so far. But absent that, we're still looking for whether entities that want to contribute to counseling further for the HAWK program could do that, and there would be a distribution mechanism involved. I think, you know, and we're like Bruce Dorr-Palin, we are on the hunt for revenues. So if other sources of revenue are also being looked at, but I don't have anything that I can share right now.
Great. I have a question here, and I think Bruce may have a follow-up to this one. Are there incentives for real estate agents to participate?
We have tried to incorporate real estate agents in HAWK. We think they're going to be really critical to the success of it. However, you know, incentives for agents don't come the same way they do for, you know, the borrower through reduction in the loan price. We can't kind of mandate or we don't know a way to interfere with the agent commission structure, which obviously varies by transaction anyway. I would say the one step, a very tangible step we made to incentivize real estate agents to participate was through Secretary Donovan's work to announce this program at the National Association of Realtors. And so on May 13th, he addressed their entire convention, membership convention, and rolled out this program, which was the day we published it. And the National Association of Realtors has published positive statements about HAWK on their website. I don't believe they've commented yet on the pilot notice itself. But I think, having said that, the key will be in each local market for counseling agencies and real estate agents to create partnerships or relationships if they don't exist already, because it'll be critical when consumers need to have their first counseling and education experience before the contract of sale. That communication will be very important.
All right, and I know you have to go and at exactly at 2. I'm just going to end with an observation from David Barenbaum, and maybe you want to comment on it, which is that many FHA originators are also objecting to paying for counseling. It's a complex issue.
I think that you know, we've heard mixed things. Actually, it's been interesting. And again, I don't think lenders have commented yet on the notice side officially. We've gotten a lot of positive statements from lenders who are interested in participating in Phase 1 and willing to pay the fee. And we have heard, as David has, that there are other lenders who object to being, quote, taxed to pay for counseling as part of this initiative. So I would say stay tuned, and again, please comment. Let us know how you think this will work or what we can do to make it work. Our goal here is to increase access to housing counseling and make it sustaining for you. We just want to get the good work you do out to so many more first-time homebuyers who will be entering the market at some point. I know it doesn't feel that way now, but we really hope that this will add value to your work, and we look forward to hearing from you so that we can make it the best program possible.
Well, thank you very much, Sarah. This was a terrific conversation. We look forward to having it again, or having different variations on this in the future. We really appreciate the work you and HUD are doing on
helping strengthen the value of housing counseling. And thanks to everybody who's on the call. Of course, we'd love to have you join NHRC and keep this work going, and there's some benefits when you do as well. We'll get back onto our regular schedule. Well, actually, yeah, we'll get back to our regular schedule in July for our calls, and we welcome the new people that have joined in this particular call and hope they continue participating. We'll have a very, very busy summer, so stay tuned for lots of good things happening in the future. Oh, and keep an eye out for the survey, and please fill out the survey that we're doing on the CFPB servicing standards. We're kind of at the cusp here where they've been out for a few months, and the big question which CFPB is asking us, which we're asking, and which I think some of you have been reporting on is, are these working? Where is it working? Where is it not working? Where does it need to be improved? And this is actually going to be, Richard Cordray has already told us he's going to be watching it closely. We know others will as well. So really helpful if you guys can take a few minutes to fill out the survey. And I guess, Matthew, you'll shoot it out again.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll send it out a few more times.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, everybody. Talk to you soon.